Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I pray you all are having an amazing day. I am with Brenda Stockdale. She is joining us today. I'm sure you all remember her from Thrive Beyond Cancer Summit. She is the director of behavioral medicine at cancer centers around the country. We are going to be talking about media exposure and how to stay strong while also being informed, because as we all know, the media can have a negative effect on us, but we're also going to talk about the good media that will have a positive effect on us. So thank you so much for joining us today, Brenda.
Thank you for inviting me. I think this is an important conversation. We've really seen people coming together. They're collaborating in solidarity and for the highest good. So we've seen this goodness. We've learned how to stay safe, but there's more we can do to stay strong. And in particular, we want to focus on media exposure. There's a lot of good information out there, but we're not seeing an emphasis on how to protect ourselves with this kind of media exposure. Science has now shown us, and a series of studies have shown, that it's the type of exposure and the amount of exposure, particularly during times of fear, that has effects on our immunity. So we really need to address this because we want to, stay strong, and we want to be informed. We want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves immunologically as much as possible. And some of this is happening peripherally just because of this media exposure.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about that? Well, we all know basically, with all things that happen in the world, we get our news from the media and we can become addicted to it. There's so much information that's out there. We want to know the updates, but we become addicted to that, and that's not healthy for us, obviously.
Right. And it's not just the addiction, it's actually the way this fear and information that we have and the way it's packaged can affect us. And I think it'll be probably best if I use 3 brief studies, and we can talk about each one of them just briefly, and that will shed light on how we're actually being affected by some of the images, and particularly the way it's postured with eye-popping headlines. The first study I thought would be applicable to share would be a longitudinal investigation, a study over several years after 9/11. And they found that folks who had a high meat consuming, folks who were really watching a lot of news, several hours a day, had an uptick in post-traumatic stress, as well as an uptick in new diseases, new symptoms, new physical disorders. So in addition to whatever they were dealing with before, this was on top of all of that.
Wow.
And it is commensurate with the amount of time folks were spending with this type of news. So that's the first study I wanted to share with you. And then the second is an interesting one too. This is the US military's behavioral medicine program. They were trying to help women who had children in the Iraq War. And this group of women had high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes. They were overweight and pretty sedentary. So they put them on a diet. They used exercise. They tracked the effects, and they found at the end of the study that they weren't very impressed with the results. These women had complied. They'd followed the diet. They had followed the exercise regimen, but they did not get the results that would be expected. So health psychologists took a look at what was going on in the environment. And they found these folks were naturally, if we had children in that kind of life and death situation, they were glued to the TV. And so they were watching hours of news coverage. And then they put these folks on what we would call a news diet. Conditions began to reverse. They were able to lose weight, their A1C normalized, blood pressure stabilized. We saw all of these good things happen because they were screening their exposure to the news, to the media, to that coverage. So I think we're learning how protective it can be when we start to screen and really limit the kind of news we're choosing. So we'll talk about some suggestions, but there is one more study I'd like to share with you, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Um, this is one of my favorites. This is a study by Ellen Langer, a Harvard researcher, and it's a nocebo study. So we're probably more familiar with placebo
Mm-hmm.
studies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And placebo nocebo, that's the measurable effect of belief in action. So people often think, oh, it's just a placebo, meaning it's tricked our minds, but it's tricked our bodies, is what it has done. So where there's physiological change in response to that belief, and it goes both ways. And that's what's called a nocebo effect, is when it goes the other way in a negative direction.
Wow.
So in this investigation, they took folks who were healthy and they sequestered them in a room filled with video footage of people who had colds. So there were video footage of people sneezing and coughing, Kleenex, blowing their nose, the whole thing. And then in the room were things that you would have if you had a cold. So there were Kleenex boxes, cold remedies scattered around the room. And at the end of the day, despite not being exposed to a cold virus, when they did laboratory studies on these individuals, not only did they have physical symptoms, but most of them actually had immunological measures, the physical measures in their labs that showed they were reacting as if they had been exposed to a virus.
That is
So,
crazy.
yes. And so this is the nocebo effect. So we're seeing a little bit of this in our medical practice right now. You know, folks who are testing negative and who, you know, may not even have any other virus going on. And then once we talk a little bit about this, they're able to channel some of that, because these pro-inflammatory cytokines that we would have released in an acute viral situation are the same that are released when we're under stress or when we're depressed.
Mm.
So we can be experiencing some of these pro-inflammatory cytokines, and then we can be pinging off of all these images of illness and fear. So we haven't even talked about what fear does to the body,
Please
but
tell us
yeah,
what fear does to the body.
well, we won't have time to go into all of the effects, but just in brief, there's about 24 different neurotransmitters and stress hormones that are released from the amygdala, which is a little area of the brain that is devoted to fear and anger. And it works for us on the short term. On the short term, if you and I are afraid, not only can we have some superhuman strength, we can actually get a bit of an uptick in our immunity, have some defenses. Our body starts to launch preparations that could save your life.
Mm-hmm.
But when that goes on, even in the animal kingdom, when that goes on for more than a day or so, right, or even hours, now it starts to work against us.
Mm.
And it can degrade those same defenses. So we see deleterious changes happening throughout the body, and we see the immune system becoming either depressed. And for individuals who have autoimmunity, we see negative changes happening there too. There's some systemic effects that occur with this sustained exposure to fear. So it's wonderful to be able to kind of, change the channel on this, so to speak, and be able to switch this up for our own good. So there's several suggestions that we have for folks, and one is we need to stay informed. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we need accurate
Absolutely.
information because we want to protect ourselves and our families. We don't want to get lazy, we don't want to get sloppy, but so we need a news source, but we need one that is not sensationalized.
Mm-hmm.
Need a news source that's giving us solid information, maybe even a print source, so that you're, on your device, but you might be screening yourself from those images.
Mm-hmm.
We know that it's the exposure to these visual images that affects the limbic brain in a very specific way too. Not just fear, but the exposure to the images has a whole different range of effects. So we really want to protect ourselves and make sure that we're using a stable, non-sensationalized source of news, kind of avoiding those eye-popping headlines.
Yeah.
Then we want to ask ourselves, how many times is it necessary a day to check? I know.
Yeah.
The first day this happened, or the second, I think was on a weekend when it came out, I was pretty glued to my phone. You know, I was just shocked. I was surprised. And then I had to realize what I was doing to myself and kind of wean myself away from that and really decide what I needed to know and when. So, you know, how many times a day and then for how long?
Yeah. I was like that too.
I think we all were shocked. Yeah.
What's going on? What's happening? I need to know.
Right. All of it. So when we do that, then we're in a position to really kind of screen not only the content, but how long we're being exposed. And that way we can make sure that whatever the information we're getting, if it's not helping us, if it's not supporting us, if it's not leveraging our self-care or our ability to protect those we love, and if it's not contributing to solidarity, then we really need to really ask ourselves, is it really necessary? And so we're suggesting too that since we need to upgrade our immunity, we want to upgrade our entertainment, our reading material, our associates. We want to, get close to our value system, choose inspirational sources, things that are really meaningful to us, and also make sure we get a big dose of comedy each day. Making sure that families are coming together, maybe watching a whole series, from beginning to end, of some sitcom that you haven't seen before, or some old show that maybe you wouldn't watch again. I love
so
Lucy
many out there. Which
yeah,
one's your favorite?
I love Lucy reruns.
Oh, of course.
Right. Just some old classics, and some of our young people haven't seen those.
Yeah.
So it can be a great way for us to reconnect not only with inspiration and values, but also with comedy too. The other thing I want to kind of mention really quickly is when we think of these images and the way they affect our body, we want to make sure that we're imagining ourselves coming from a place of strength. We want to think of our bodies as being protected, and that we automatically have this internal sense of strength, so that if we are exposed, or even if we're sick, we're not exhausting our immune system by thinking of fighting something, but that we're supporting ourselves by thinking of healing. Physical effects that we talked about in those earlier studies are just examples of how our images and the way we're perceiving our mindset, the way we're perceiving something is affecting us physically. So whether we're protecting ourselves or whether we're actually healing from something, we want to have that same healthy imagery and protect ourselves in a nurturing way that emphasizes our strength rather than any kind of inadequacy.
This is so good. This is so good. This is so helpful.
Matthew Walker is a sleep scientist in the UK, and he has found in his laboratory that the quality of sleep, which is of course linked to our immunity, goes up. We actually have a higher quality of sleep when we're engaged in gratitude within an hour or two before bed.
Wow.
So when we think about our habits,
I see that.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
Quality of sleep. And he's a secular guy, but I just thought it was just fascinating to find that that's what in his sleep lab, that's what they've shown. And so our habit of kind of hanging onto our phones, constantly checking the news 24/7, not such a great idea. Think about that post 9/11 study.
Yeah.
We're tuning into the news, and that was old TV. Nobody's even watching TV anymore. We've just got the headlines, constantly dinging us right here in the palm of our hand.
Yeah.
So it's especially important to secure that so that we're really choosing wisely what sites we're visiting and our social media exposure. And then especially that hour or two before bed, kind of redirecting to gratitude.
Yeah, which is so funny because as you said that, I thought about the times that I would actually write what I'm grateful for before I go to sleep.
Ah,
So peaceful.
ah,
I feel so good. And then if I watch something or if I'm on my phone and I'm reading the headlines and all that stuff, like I don't have that good of sleep. And sometimes I even start dreaming
yes,
about things that I have like these crazy dreams. So
totally.
I didn't even think about that. That's so good.
And I think it's something that is important because as we're drifting off to sleep, it's a perfect time to start giving ourselves an image, in addition to our gratitudes, but an image of health and
Mm-hmm.
vibrant well-being. Studies show that repeated, very brief, 1 to 2 minutes at a shot, little mini breaks, MINI, throughout the day. I should say MANY and then MINI, mini breaks throughout the day, can have a fabulous effect. So we don't want to think that just because we're not spending a lot of time with a particular relaxation piece that it's not going to be useful. But taking short, repeated breaks throughout the day can be really helpful. So we hope that folks can use this in a couple of different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So, should we like go over really quickly um, all the things that you told us about today that will be super beneficial
Okay,
and
great.
helpful?
Okay.
Because there's so many great things, and it's so helpful because, like you said, like there are people who may have like just a common cold, and of course, because we're getting all of this information, not
Right.
saying that you can't be mindful or cautious of like, oh, do I actually have one of the symptoms?
Yes, we should be careful.
Yes. But some people are like automatically thinking like, oh my God, do I have that? And it's creating more stress than it is helping them.
That's right. So they may not have the virus, but they could actually develop a flu or a cold or just not feel well because of the extraordinary stress response.
Yes, yes, that's so good. Okay, so one of the first things you said is the media exposure, of course. We can
Yes,
overdo it, we become addicted to it, and so we should be very careful of who we're getting our media from. It should be preferably print, which I think is so good. So, like maybe a website or something like that would be more helpful. Like if I go to the CDC, I'm not
exactly.
as,
Totally.
overly sensitized. And if I were to go to, CNN or something like that, and kind of knowing when to go to a CNN versus like, okay, I just want to get the facts. So let me
Right.
go to the CDC website.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
That's good.
And how many times a day?
How many times a day? Yes,
Right.
that
Right.
is important.
Yep. And then we're also screening our social media
Yes.
and looking to make sure that our conversation and our entertainment, whether it's reading, movies, whatever, this is not the time to be watching Contagion or Outbreak.
Okay.
That's what.
That's good because honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I was like, I kind of want to watch Contagion right now. Just
I
what
know,
the
right?
similarities
Right,
between what's happening right now in the world.
right. It's so funny. And what happens is those are the images that get stuck in our head if we get sick. And I think right now this is what we want to see because the brain wants to go there. We want to keep checking our phone. We want to see some of those eye-popping headlines. There's a part of us that's kind of like trying to tear your eyes away from a train wreck, you know? So
Yes.
there's this natural tendency to kind of want to go for the horror show. But we're having to pull ourselves back from this and really ask, is this in my highest good?
Yeah.
Is this in my best interest? And because the brain, that limbic brain, Hollywood knows they've been taking advantage of it for decades. It's called the willful suspension of disbelief. You know more about this than any of us.
I do know. I do know. Sorry, guys.
Right. You know all about this. So we have a physical reaction to movies and to these images. And right now we just need to say, wow, we've got to make sure that it's taking us where we want to go.
Yes. And that's where self-care comes in, right? Knowing
Yes.
that when you're feeling those excess like emotions that are not serving you, it's
Yes.
time to pull away and let it go.
That's right. So we need more relaxation, little breaks during the day, little meditative relaxation breaks now than before, perhaps. Because
Yeah.
we already have the stresses we were dealing with before this happened. We just have new stressors on top of it. So
Yes.
we want to upgrade our own, self-care practices and make sure that we're doing a good job with that.
Yeah.
Speaking of, another idea is to, put up around the house pictures of really happy times, family vacations, and times when we were feeling really well,
Mm,
or pictures that remind us of a healthy time. So those kinds of images can be more useful and can help us counteract some of the nocebo conditioning that we've been talking about.
yeah. Yeah. That's so good. So then, um, of course, we're not watching those types of movies. We're going to watch happy movies. We're going to watch I Love Lucy, things that make us happy. Like for me, I also like listening to gospel music and like music that's going to uplift me.
Yes.
Laughing, of course, like you said, the whole imaging, right? So making sure that we're thinking uh, thoughts and imagining us being protected and having strength and being strong. Like that's really important.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely, because we definitely want to identify with the idea that we can handle what comes our way.
Okay.
And that helps us physically and emotionally.
Okay.
We
Okay.
want to cultivate that mindset of resilience.
Yes.
And images that go with that mindset of resilience is more than just positive thinking. It actually has really profound physiological effects.
Yes. Okay. And then, of course, doing the guided imagery that you have gifted us with that will help us to relax
Yes.
and to decompress and to
Yes.
really focus on what it is that we want to feel and see and not everything that's coming at us.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
And with this imagery, it's also great because we know that healthy cells have a signature, a vibration signature. So our cells do vibrate, they do a shimmy,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a healthy signature for that. I know, isn't that wonderful? And even in test tubes, for example, the HIV virus was shattered with a particular vibration. So this vibration has a very interesting effect in nature and in our own biology. So when we think of this imagery, when folks do it and we pick out that color or we allow just that color to come up, we can remember that color is frequency, it's vibration. So as we upgrade our vibration throughout our mind and body, we're really just focused on our highest good and connecting with the well-being of our brothers and sisters all around the world. It's this collective humanity that we really want to attach to and think of that greater good, that we're all in this together. And
Yes.
that mindset too of solidarity and helping others can also help protect ourselves physically as well.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so happy that you said that because if there isn't a time, the best time right now where we feel it and know it is that we are all in this together. This is affecting every single one of us. And the best thing for us to do is to
Yes.
be unified.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. And we're really thinking of other people too. It's
yeah,
not just our story, right? It's everyone. So as we upgrade our what we're being exposed to, then we're more we're better company for our friends and family.
Yes, that's so true. Starts with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for this.
Thank you so much for joining us today and for all that you do, of course. I always appreciate talking to
Well,
you, and you just given us so much knowledge and wisdom to help us, you know, it's amazing.